Hey everyone, so this is a companion video I'm putting on my channel just so that everybody can view it, but it's going to go out with every single one of the handmade knives that I make. Now I have one of my old knives that I've made back in my shop to do up a new sheath for it that's a bit more appropriate to task. But this skinning knife was actually made for a friend of mine who is an avid hunter, and it has been through the ringer. This knife, it has done completely dressed probably 80 animals now. I'm talking big animals like sheep, deer, kangaroos, and it's in for a new sheath, and it's really cool to actually get to see it after being used so heavily for quite a while now, probably 7 months or so. And I wanted to do a video that shows you how to care for a carbon steel knife, because most people are used to, if they've only ever bought production line knives before, they'd be used to high chromium stainless steels, which don't really need that much care. They need some care, but compared to a handmade carbon steel knife, they don't need much care at all. Whereas carbon steel knives have one big weakness compared to stainless steel, and that is that they are prone to rust. That isn't the only thing to look after with them, but we'll go into that in more detail later. So the first thing, obviously, I'm going to sort of just power through the points so this video doesn't drag on too long. The first thing, obviously, is if you're going to be you're sort of done using it and you've been using it and it's got moisture on it, whether it be in the case of a chef knife, it'd be food or oils. On a hunting knife or a skinning knife, it might be blood, or it might be water. You might have used a damp rag on it. You want to wipe the blade off before putting it back into the sheath, because when you have a knife exposed like this, it's very easy to clean off the blade by wiping it down. It's very difficult to clean the inside of a sheath. So if you put a dirty knife back into the sheath is going to pick up all of that schmutz, and every time you put the knife back in the sheath, it's going to put it back onto the blade, creating a nice little moist, sealed, humid environment, which is going to damage the knife. That's fairly obvious, but you'd be surprised how few people do it. You just have a rag in your pocket, wipe the blade off with the rag before you put it back in the sheath. You only have to put a dirty knife in once for it to cause permanent problems with that sheath. Next thing, obviously, is if you are done using it for the day and you're not going to be pulling it out to use again anytime soon, oil it. Now, a good oil, will go into oil choices later, but you don't need much. All you need to do is basically, I'll show you, put tiny little smear of oil on the side. You can just wipe it on with your finger if you want to. Obviously be careful of the sharp edge of the knife. Get the other side as well. Usually that little bit will be enough to do both sides. And that's it. It's now ready to put away for the day or the week or however long it's going to be. But if you're going to be throwing this back into your hunting bag, it's now safe. It's oiled, you can throw it away, stick it in your bag, forget about it, nothing's going to happen to it. So oil choices matter though. Not any old oil is going to work. Don't be going and doing this with engine oil or something like that. Best thing to do is to get a multi-purpose synthetic oil. I use 3-in-1, not sponsored, would love to be, but not sponsored. 3-in-1, a bottle like this, literally costs you about $3.20 Australian. And that's not much money for a bottle which is slimline, so it fits in a pocket. It's got an inbuilt spout on it, and it will work on steel, wood, and leather. And that's important. Not all oils are appropriate for all materials. 3-in-1 oil is. If you are a bit more serious about taking care of your knives, 3-in-1 oil does rub off easily and it does not last long. You have to keep oiling the knife. If you want something that will last a much longer time, Ballast Doll, which I'm a huge fan of, also not sponsored, would love to be. Ballast Doll is much more expensive, but it lasts so much longer, and because of that, you use less of it. And a bottle this size has lasted me about 3 years, and I make knives, so it gives you an idea of how long it can last for. If you're using a knife that is designed for use around food, obviously synthetic oils are not a good idea to put on there. So you can actually do food safe mineral oil. It's a fantastic way to oil it, and you probably already have that anyway, because you may know it as butcher's block oil. Works fine on knives as well, or on the steel of knives. But what you're trying to avoid is rust. Now, your normal sort of store-bought pocket knives and things like that are usually made of a high chromium steel, so they don't, generally speaking, don't rust, or you have to do a lot of work on them to make them rust. Carbon steel knives, however, will rust readily, and you have to account for that, you have to prepare for that. Now, a good way to tell if you have patina or rust on your knife is to actually run your finger, just the pad of your finger, along where the suspected rust is. Now, if it is a patina forming, which we'll go into in a bit, you will not feel anything, it will be smooth. But if you feel resistance like sandpaper, that's surface rust forming, and you need to get it off. Now, the best way to get surface rust off is with a bit of the oil that you're using and some ultrafine steel wool. Slip of the tongue. Although you can use ultrafine sandpaper, although this is cheaper and more sort of generically usable. And all you have to do is just take a little ball of it like that, put a little bit of the oil on there, and rub, 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 rub. And the slight surface rust will come off with relative ease, and it won't affect the surface of your steel. Now, what if it's a patina forming on your steel? Well, a lot of people, after they have got their handmade carbon steel knife and they love the way it looks and everything, get very upset when a patina starts forming. This one's getting a beautiful patina across it from all of the use. Patinas are, contrary to popular belief, a good thing. You want a patina to form on your knife because a patina is telling the story. It's a unique thing to your knife and no other knife. You can't replicate patinas in the way that you could replicate something like an etch or something. If Damascus pattern starts rubbing off or wearing away over time, you can re-etch it and get that pattern back. A patina, though, is literally a tapestry of the story of how your knife was used. High acidic foods, for example, will quickly patina something. Blood will patina steel, and it's literally painting a pattern of the story of your knife. So don't fight against patinas. Carbon steels develop them. It just happens, but it's making your knife yours. Now, this has a dark stonewash finish on it, and that's sort of like a forced patina, so it's protecting it from excessive patinaing, just because I knew what it was going to be used for, and boy did it get used for it. So patinas are good. Let them happen. As for cleaning your knife off, don't stick a carbon steel knife, or even if it's a stainless steel knife that's been handmade, don't just stick it in the dishwasher. This is not something you want to leave wet, ever. You want to actually take the time to dry it off, wipe it down. Oil's a great way to do it, or even just dipping a rag or something in some soapy water, wipe it all off, and then dry it thoroughly, and then oil it, and then store it. Carbon steel rusts. I cannot stress that enough. Now, why would you have a carbon steel knife if it rusts? Simple answer to that is most stainless steels sacrifice edge retention and strength and toughness for the ability to not rust and to be mistreated, essentially. It's not the case with all stainless steel knives, but most stainless steels that you're going to find in commercially available knives are designed like this. They're not tough. If you have a skinning knife that you've bought from some reputable brand, or maybe a non-reputable brand, after hitting a few bones while you're skinning, you're going to dull the knife. A carbon steel knife, you can keep going and going, provided it's heat treated correctly. You can keep going and going and going with that thing, and bone is just, it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. We test our knife makers test our knives by beating them into steel bars, chopping through 2x4s and making sure it still shaves. A bit of bone, it's no problem. But stainless steel knives that are just stamped out in a factory and pushed out in production, you know, they kind of want you to buy more. So they're going to wear away over time. A good carbon steel knife that's been looked after correctly by being oiled and treated properly and not allowed to rust is literally going to last generations. There are family heirloom swords from Japan, katanas, that are literally 1,000 years old that are still kicking around. It's incredible. They look like they were made yesterday. And it's just because the respect has been given to the piece. And this is the same. If you're going to spend a fortune, or even if you've been gifted a knife that has had a lot of work put into it, treat it right, and it will literally be something you could pass on to your children's children's children. So That's just the steel though, but that's not the only part of a knife. You often have what's called a bolster or guard, which will sit at the base of the ricasso and above the handle, and a lot of the time that's made of a non-ferrous metal. In the case of this one, it's actually beaten copper. I don't know if you can get some light onto this here. You can kind of see it in there. Beaten copper. Got my viewfinder down here. And the beaten copper, it looks beautiful. I'm a big fan of copper on knives. However, it does tarnish, and if you let it tarnish too long, it starts turning green and gets a little white powdery stuff on it. You don't want that to happen, because that will lead to nasty things in the longevity of your knife. Very, very simple fix. You take your fine steel wool and you rub it, and it will buff it up and polish it beautifully. All the detail will come out. And it's literally, about that much rubbing. It's not, it's really not much. You'll see the results instantly. It also benefits from being oiled, non-ferrous metals, but you won't notice the effects as much as it does on the steel. Now, when I say ultrafine steel wool, a lot of people don't realize there are different grades of steel wool. You don't want to use like a dish scourer on your knife. You want to get ultrafine, the finest grade steel wool you can get. And a roll of this is a few bucks. It's really not, it's enough to last for years. It's not an expensive thing. So a little bit of good multi-purpose oil, a little bit of steel wool can save you a lot of nightmares. So what about the handle? Now, some people see the handle as just a functional thing, it's just for hold on to, and that's all that matters with it, and that's fine. But a lot of the time, if you've had a custom knife made, you will find that it is made from something that is particularly visually appealing. The knife maker has gone through great pains to actually get something that has magnificent grain structure through it. And that detail will be lost over time as the oils in your hand and whatever you've been working on starts soaking into it. Even if it's stabilized timber, it will sort of patina in its own way over time. So re-oiling it is important. Multi-purpose oils do work. Although, if you want to get the best grain and figuring to be popping out of it, tung oil is incredible for it. It's sometimes called Chinese wood oil or China wood oil, or even just boiled linseed oil. Although boiled linseed oil you'll have to do more often because it never fully polymerizes, which means forming a hard coating that is protective over the surface. But a little bit of oil doesn't go astray. Now, these are really, really cheap, 3-in-1 oil, but it doesn't last as long. You have to do it more often. If you want to invest a little bit more money in knife care, get a bottle of Ballast Doll. It's the same thing. It does the same thing like leather, wood, and steel, but it will last a lot longer. This stuff polymerizes beautifully. It stays on the material much longer, and you have to do it far less frequent. But you will pay more for this. But like, obviously, the bottle size difference tells you why. You can't really get small bottles of this as easily. So these are things that you need to take into consideration. Your handle, your guard, your blade, your sheath. It's you have invested in something that is special, something that can literally be an heirloom that would pass down for generations. And a small amount of care can make it last for a particularly long amount of time. Now I'm going to leave you with one last product placement. Once again, not sponsored. I would love to be sponsored by these guys, but it's honestly a product that anybody that takes knives seriously, that uses knives in their profession, that collects knives, that has a handmade knife and loves it and wants it to last a long time, invest in a product called Renaissance Wax. It comes in a small jar, only about this big. I left it inside because I use it so frequently. A small jar like this, I bought mine about 7 years ago, and I'm only just about halfway through it. It lasts a long time, and it's not a big investment. It's quite reasonably priced. Renaissance Wax is a fully polymerizing protective wax that works on leather, it works on wood, it works on non-ferrous metal, it works on steel. You coat the entire thing, rub it in. It's a wax. It looks like almost like a cross between candle wax and face cream, and it's white. And you gob a little bit on there, and you grab a cloth, preferably a microfiber cloth, and you rub it into the surface of everything. And it will form a protective coating that not only actually brings out wood grain and figuring and steel patterns, harmonies and things like that, but it protects the steel in a way that almost nothing else can. It will literally make your knife last forever if you were to encase it in that and then stow it in a box. Archaeologists will dig it out 500 years from now and it'll still be fine and look like new. Renaissance wax is quite literally the most powerful tool you can have in your arsenal if you use handmade knives. So hopefully this has actually empowered you to actually look after your knives better and keep them going for a long time, because obviously when you make knives for a living like me, you want your clients to be able to enjoy these knives for a very long time, and most people don't realize the difference between stainless and carbon and what that means for a knife owner. So I will leave you to it, and if you liked this content and you found it valuable, check out the links below. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, I've got a Patreon, there's got an Etsy shop where you can buy some of my handmade knives. Check it all out, links are in the description, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.
There were 3 old gypsies came to our hall door. They came brave and boldly, oh. One sang high and the other sang low, and the lady sang the regal-tegal gypsy, oh. It was upstairs, downstairs the lady went, put on a suit of leather, oh. It was the cry all around her door, she's away with the regal-tegal gypsy, oh.